I think we might be live. I've got everything in place. The audio's... yeah, I think we're good. And we're live. Good evening, everyone. As you can tell, we're doing a PMQ response, which I'm actually quite happy about, because it wasn't predominantly about Brexit. There were some slide digs here and there, and yeah, unsurprisingly, it was pretty cancerous, but overall, it was nice to have something different to talk about, or is going to be nice to have something different to talk about. I think, if you notice from the thumbnail, yeah, it's about transport, because this is a very hot topic. We're not talking about Brexit, and when that's over, we will have to go back to, well, the consequences, of course. That will be a huge talking point. But certain deals that have existed or been made under the timing of what's his name? Oh, Chris Grayling, the bald guy from the thumbnail. It's kind of gotten it's yeah, shit's getting really interesting now. And no, it's kind of is about Euro Truck, but I'm not playing Euro Truck. But it does concern delivering. So, how the government has handled preparing for no deal, deals that have existed. No joke, I have three pages of notes here for this PMQ, for things based on the questions, but also I've highlighted a few areas, things that interested me immensely about certain answers and questions. I'm going to say now, Jeremy Corbyn won this. He destroyed Theresa May because he did the one thing he should always do. No joke, he should stick to topics that put her on the spot. She was clearly ill-prepared for this. Mandy, I don't know if you didn't send me any videos. I've got my DMs open here and I don't see any, I'm afraid. Excuse me. But yeah, Theresa May gets annihilated. She's clearly underprepared for this. This was not the topic she may have been wanting to discuss, but this week has, oddly enough, and I've watched enough Parliament this week to notice, it was inevitable that transport would come up, because public transport has taken such a hammering over the years, and many will use this as a stepping stone talking point to argue that we should renationalise rail, renationalise the buses. Any other public transport? No, just those two. And if it wasn't for the cost of buying them back, and then the money needed to invest in them, I would totally agree. But the money required is phenomenal. And it's just, you know, it's a bit of a, yeah. Thank you, Discnell, for doing your job. Anyway, let us begin. There is a fair amount of virtue, so I do apologise, but as always, it's unsurprising. The virtue is strong in this. It always is. So, yeah. Oh crap, that's... oh, hang on. That is so quiet on my end. There we go. Start again.
Order! Questions to the Prime Minister, Helen Whately!
Before the question's even asked, Michael, you are absolutely right. British Rail was rubbish. And it was one of the many reasons it had to be sold off, because we couldn't afford to invest in it. The argument that is counter-made is that we should... excuse me for that. We should buy it all back and reinvest in it, because we're still... we are still giving money to rail companies in forms of bailouts and subsidies. So why on earth, for the service to not improve and for them to get the fares to get more expensive, should we continue to fund things that we don't own with government subsidies? That is... yeah.
Question one, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, later today, this House will have an opportunity to pay tribute to the Clerk of the House, Sir David Matzler. May I take this opportunity to add my own? Sir David has served this House for over 40 years with dedication and tireless devotion.
He's the guy on the left. At the three sat in front of the Speaker, he's the guy on the left.
His support and advice on parliamentary procedure and business has been invaluable.
Why do they sound like kids on the playground? Because they're not allowed to applaud. It is unparliamentary to clap, which would be a more, I think, I don't know, there's something better about that. Maybe they should just go to jazz hands. I mean, at least then I don't have to listen to their, and I'll quote the Speaker, chuntering from a sedentary position, which is almost a, yeah, fuck it.
And I know that members from all sides of the House want to join me in thanking him for his service and in wishing him the very best for the future. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
They always do seem to be making tributes, because everything is a national this and a tragedy that. The question that's about to crop up is with regards, and I'm going to spoil it in advance. It concerns a bill that would make it harder for FGM to happen. I will get into that once she's asked the question, because there are two areas I want to talk about with it.
Helen Waitley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I also pay tribute to the work of the Clerk of the House? In January, a mother of a 3-year-old girl was convicted of female genital mutilation. Our first FGM conviction. But a chilling reminder that young girls are still being cut, not just in Africa and around the world, but also here in the UK. Will my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, make government time to progress my honourable friend, the member for Richmond Park's bill to protect more girls from this abhorrent practice?
Right, so the two areas that need to be discussed. First of all, the reason the bill has been held up. Because I believe his name is Christopher Chop. He was the one that held up he objected to the progression of a bill last year on upskirting. Right? And so he also did it for this, and it means more debates have to happen. That's why. And it's because he's not being sexist, he's taking a very strong position that we should be absolutely clear on everything that we put through Parliament. Skulls for the Skull Throne. And I think it's important that he exercise that parliamentary right, because we want to be absolutely clear on that bill. The interesting thing here is, with what she's asked, and I'll get to the second point in a moment, is that there is no way you can truly stop someone from leaving your country unless you have found some magical way of proving that the purpose for them leaving the country is to go and cut their child in the name of their god. Which baffles me, by the way. Why the fuck do any religions, and I'd love for someone to tell me this, I'm sure I'll get a comment explaining this in great detail afterwards especially, explain to me why God created us and then decided, you know what would be a wizard idea? I'm going to risk incredible discomfort, we're going to lose a bit of feeling, and I'm going to risk you dying just to remove some things that, let's face it, don't need to be removed and should not be removed unless medically necessary. Now the second point, I did actually, it was the very first tweet I put out on Twitter for the hashtag PMQs. It was simply, all GM should be banned. All of it. There is no good reason why boys should be cut, and I don't know why we have normalised it. Let's face it, it is an unacceptable practice that harms kids and takes away their agency to decide for themselves what they want to do with their body. All under the guise of it being normalised within society, which is unacceptable. It is unacceptable that we still do this, and we are somehow giving people a pass to keep doing this. As far as I'm concerned, you have no valid reason. It is not. It doesn't need to be something we accept. This country is becoming more and more atheist. That's why the fuck we indulge these quoted religious practices baffles me. And it is not an aesthetic thing either. Don't bullshit me with that, because that's not a good enough excuse. Genital mutilation of any kind is unacceptable. I think I've made my point. Anyway, I do support this bill, but I would like there to be all genital mutilation added. I'd like all to be banned. I don't know why only girls are being thought of, quite frankly, and why it is so normal to cut boys. Yes, I've heard about that, but again, I believe that that needs to be a decision made by an adult as opposed to a boy on behalf by the parents. That is still an adult decision, an informed adult decision. Although I still don't support it unless it's medically necessary. We have become more hygiene driven, so I don't think those excuses stack up.
My honourable friend is absolutely right to raise the issue of this abhorrent practice, to recognise the importance of that first prosecution that took place on female genital mutilation here in the UK. It's only right that we find time for this bill, and the government will provide time to deliver it. We've strengthened the law on FGM, leading to that first conviction. We're helping communities around the world to end this appalling crime. But it is important that we give time to this bill and act further to ensure that we end what is an absolutely abhorrent crime that scars young girls for the rest of their lives, both physically and mentally.
That virtue. Right. Jeremy Corbyn's about to speak, and it's a lot of virtue. Seriously, lots of virtue. And I do apologise. Oh, I haven't got top chat enabled. I need to see live chat. It's just, yeah. Let's go with that. Genital protection, yeah. Okay, yes, let's continue. Yeah, Corbyn's about to be very virtuous for a while.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the Prime Minister and the whole House will join me in sending our deepest sympathies to the friends and family of the cadet who died at Sandhurst last week. I'm sure the MOD is supporting the family and fellow cadets at a difficult time, but I also hope they will be reviewing the mental health support they give to all members of the armed forces at all times. Mr. Speaker, we also mourn the loss of Gordon Banks.
Before he talks about Gordon Banks, the world's greatest goalkeeper to ever exist, UK law, technically both versions of genital mutilation are already illegal. I think this is where it's because it's considered circumcision for boys. They don't regard it in the same way if it's done by medical practitioners or surgeons even. So I don't think they consider it to be genital mutilation when it is. Again, unless medically needed, no.
And send our condolences to his friends and family and the entire football community. He was one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time. 73 caps for England, including playing in every single game during the victorious 1966 World Cup campaign, which I remember with joy.
Fuck, you're old.
Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank Sir David Napley for his work as Clerk to the House and wish him well in his retirement. He's been here even longer than I have, and
but you're not a career politician, remember?
Has always been a source of advice to all members, irrespective of their party, and I always admire his dry wit and humour whilst describing the proceedings of the House. I think we owe him a big debt of gratitude. Mr. Speaker, the government's handling of Brexit has been costly, shambolic and deliberately evasive. Nothing symbolises that more than the fiasco of Seaborne Freight.
Seaborne Freight, by the way, is a rather interesting company. They were one of 3 that were given contracts. These contracts were in the event of no deal. They were trade freight. They basically were supposed to be the companies we trusted with the new route from Ramsgate to Belgium. And Seaborne Freight's, well, rather interestingly, while they had the smallest contract, they had no boats. Although, and it took me a while to find a quote for this, so I'm going to actually, I'll play it in a moment. But had this progressed, there was somewhere where they would have gotten the boats, and I thought it wise to do a considerable amount of fucking research into this. Because I couldn't find how they were going to get the boats until I was listening to something by chance, and Chris Grayling, the Nimrod on the thumbnail, actually said it, how they got the boats. So I'm going to go here. Hopefully I can find it. Let's go back to 1:30. Within the next minute, he will explain why or where the boats... And this is the Transport Secretary, by the way, the Nimrod who has done so much stupid shit recently. He's also remarkably stupid, in the sense that he doesn't follow parliamentary procedure. He doesn't give statements to the opposition with enough time. He doesn't turn to Parliament much, even though I believe he's there this evening, answering questions about, well, his conduct and the failings surrounding his department of late. So I'll let him speak about where Seaborne Freight would have gotten their boats from.
And the need for Seaborne to secure vessels and port user agreements in order to deliver a service. However, the shorter distance between the two ports meant that the route,
which is Ramsgate to Belgium,
could provide us with shorter journey times and lower cost, making it a potentially attractive part of the package.
It's worth noting the reason that this was a desirable port for Ramsgate, which is hugely beneficial for Ramsgate. I live near Ramsgate. The job opportunity here would have been immense, and it was specifically for Seaborne Freight to be transporting medical supplies. So huge opportunity lost.
Seaborne's proposition to the department was backed by Arklow Shipping.
Arklow Shipping is, and I've got it written down here. I've got a whole thing on this. Where is it? Oh fuck it, I can't find it. Too much effort. They were the company. Arklow Shipping were the company that, and they're Irish, as he said before I interrupted him. They were the ones that gave Chris Grayling the recommendation of Seaborne Freight, because Seaborne Freight had business dealings with Arklow Shipping in Ireland. They trusted them, and this was a contract given to an upstart company, a new build company. So it was a chance for them to shine. There is more to Seaborne Freight than you think, but we'll get to that in a moment. But I will let him finish.
Biggest and one of Europe's largest shipping companies. For commercial reasons, I've not been able to name Arklow Shipping or mention their involvement to date, but their support for the proposition from the outset and the assurances the department received provided confidence in the viability of this deal. Arklow confirmed to me that they intended to finance the purchase of ships and would be major shareholders in Seaborne.
That should answer how Seaborne were going to get freights, provided the deal went through. But as the deal did not, and I don't need that video anymore, as it did not, yeah, it's created a bit of a shitstorm. And because Grayling couldn't name Arklow sooner, this has created an air of uncertainty, and naturally people are a bit pissy about it. And Perfectly Faded Delusions, over on Streamy, I did not know about that. That is, no, I didn't know that at all. And the chat is still talking about circumcision. Fantastic. Or genital mutilation, as it should be known. Let's continue. Corbyn, by the way, he will win this. It's just amazing.
A company with no ships and no trading history. On the 8th of January, the Transport Secretary told the House, "We're confident the firm will deliver the service." What went wrong?
I can tell you what went wrong. Well, for this, a little history lesson. So, Seaborne Freight got their terms of service from a takeaway menu. While recommended by Arklow pulled their recommendation of their association to Seaborne Freight 2 weeks ago. So whenever Grayling was hammered in Parliament, he fobbed it off by saying, "You don't understand business." Now tell me, when you offer a contract worth millions to a company that has no ships and has no actual business, in the sense that their terms of service were literally taken off a fucking takeaway menu, do you not think you're being, trolled a bit so someone can have a bit of a laugh with your money? I mean, you say you vetted them, but I'd like to think under the Freedom of Information Act I'd be able to find the risk assessments that someone did in fact claim had been done. And it will come up later because Corbyn is going to hammer it home that the government circumvented rules about how we vet companies. I did want to point out as well that if you, and one of his, there is a little bit of a straw man that Theresa will set up, in the sense that he is implying, Jeremy, that is implying this monopoly idea, or this idea that the only way you can do business is by creating a monopoly, by only giving it to renowned companies as opposed to giving others opportunity, thereby creating a, well, not really a monopoly, but at the same time I get the point of security, but it's the straw man she tries to set up. So I thought I'd address that now. There is nothing inherently wrong with offering a contract to a smaller company, or to a company that is starting up, a startup company as it is. However, you have to be very open and honest, and I'm sure the subcommittees will love this, when they go through this with a fine-tooth comb and find out that you have offered it to somebody based on a reputation, but with there being a literal zero actual business dealings from the place that gave you the recommendation. And what happened to the free market, I have no idea. But apparently it doesn't exist anymore. And smug bastard. Okay, maybe Corbyn does, but in this PMQ, he is absolutely on point. I have to give him credit. I watched this back. He absolutely destroys May, because he doesn't falter, and that's good. Oh, where are we? Yes.
First of all, can I join the right honourable gentleman in the remarks he made about the cadet at Sandhurst? He referenced the issue of mental health. This is an important issue overall, but obviously an important issue in our armed forces as well. And I'd like to pay tribute to the work of my honourable friend, the member for Plymouth Moor View, for the work that he has done in relation to mental health in the armed forces. I'd also like to send my deepest sympathies to the family and friends of Gordon Banks. Like the right honourable gentleman, I'm old enough to remember the 1966 World Cup.
Fuck, you're old.
Now, let's be honest in this house. I think that's important.
Slight dig at the SNP.
But from being part of that team to I think something else that people remember, the astonishing Pelé save in 1970. He was regarded as one of the world's greatest goalkeepers. But I also know that he did a lot of community work in his local area as well. And I know members from all sides of the House would like to join me in paying tribute to him. As regards the freight capacity, the government let 3 contracts. 90% of that was let to DFDS and Brittany Ferries. Those contracts remain in place, and that capacity has been obtained. And due diligence was carried out on all of these contracts. And as the Secretary of State for Transport made clear in this House earlier this week, we will continue to ensure that we provide that capacity, which is important in a no-deal situation, and we will ensure the capacity is there.
So these contracts exist in under the guise of no deal. That is the point. That's why some of these start at the end of March or end of April. We'll get to that, because I know I've got the National Audit Office PDF on my screen somewhere, and we are going to go through 2 parts of it that are relevant to the next question. The point is, 90% of the contracts were secured deals with companies that are vetted and have much high respect, and they are operating out of ports that have a lot more traffic, Dover and Portsmouth. The third one was out of Ramsgate, which doesn't have a trade route, but will have a trade route to Belgium. That it's a minor deal, but there's obviously money on the table, and while the government is prepping for no deal, because this deal fell through, people are laughing at them. And there are consequences of this deal falling through, which Corbyn will absolutely crush May over.
Mr. Speaker, the Transport Secretary told the House that this decision to award a contract to Seaborne Freight had no cost to the taxpayer.
Which is true.
This week, the National Audit Office found that £800,000 had been spent on external consultants to assess the bid.
We'll get to that in a minute, I promise.
Will the Prime Minister use this opportunity to correct the record?
I'm not going to let her do it because she's a retard. So instead, I'm going to do it. So where is it? Where is it? Ah, here we are. We're here. We'll come here. So this is the awards of contracts for additional freight capacity on ferry services. This is the paper. Fuck, you're on. Yes. This is the paper he is referring to. And we are going to scroll all the way down to page 13 because I can't be asked to just type it up. You know, I should just type it up. So page 13, this is here, right? I wanted to point this out. This is Brittany Ferries, percentage of UK roll and roll-off market, 10, 25, Seaborne, fuck all. Ramsgate, look at this. Plymouth, Poole and Portsmouth. Dover, Felixstowe, Immingham, Newcastle and New Haven. That's a lot. But we're going to keep going. So this is the new route, Ramsgate to Ostend. We will keep going though, because I think this is relevant. Keep going to page 20. Here we are. Right. He mentioned £800,000. Do you remember on consultancies? Right. What's this here? 0.8 million. What? 0.8 million? Oh, that's right. £800,000 is a deposit paid by the department. The 800,000 he is referring to is that. Okay? I also want to quickly address a point about... Oh no, I will get to it soon actually. No, there's another point on this paper that I really want to get to. But this here, it's not gone to Seaborne, it's to Brittany Ferries, who have the... Well, actually, pretty much, it's almost... Yeah, it's a lot of money there, look. They have more routes, they're getting less money. 8 separate contracts. See, and they all start, look at that, operational by the 29th of March, and this one was the end of April, essentially. I had to point this out now because, honestly, this was such a bit... It felt like intellectual dishonesty, but unfortunately Theresa May is so ill-prepared for this shit that she doesn't do a very good job arguing about any of this. I'm going to keep scrolling down for a second because I think the other point is going to pop up soon. Is it? No, it's appendix. Fuck this shit then. We will just go back to the video. But I did want to use it as a... Oh, crap. Close that. I wanted to point out that he fucked one little point up. And I wanted to drive my point home because I'm a dick. Do I have the other thing? Oh, I do! Oh, brilliant. When we get to it, it's going to be delicious. Where is... Is this it? No, that's me. Right, sorry, I have so many tabs open. I do apologise.
I have to say to the right honourable gentleman, he's a bit late to the party on this, because I was asked this question yesterday in the statement, I think, from the SNP benches. So Labour following the SNP. Well, whatever next. Can I say to the right honourable gentleman that, of course, as I've just said, when these contracts were all let, proper due diligence was carried out. That included...
This term, due diligence, I'm not sure she knows what it means. And it'll certainly come back to bite her on the ass later.
That included third-party assessment of the companies that were bidding for the contracts. There would have been a cost attached to this process, regardless of who the contracts were entered into with.
Right, so in short, she answered the question yesterday, but she could have restated it today, which tells me that she didn't know about that money. That's what it tells me. I know this, because that's what I wrote down in my book here. She gave essentially a shit answer about diligence and third parties. Okay.
Jeremy Corbyn!
I'm really impressed that the Prime Minister can keep a straight face while she said due diligence was carried out. The Transport Secretary said its business and operational plans were assessed for the department by external advisors. On the basis of that advice to his own department, Seaborne was a start-up company with no ships and the contract was high risk, is what he was told.
But, as I've stated, and I don't think he knew this either, because that video from earlier with Chris Grayling detailing where the boats came from, I don't believe he would have known about this, and I don't think any of the MPs would have passed that information over to him. So his premise is slightly inaccurate. But he still crushes May, come on.
Why then if he was told it was high risk, did he proceed with the contract?
To the right honourable gentleman, what he appears to be suggesting is that the government should never look at start-up companies, should never look at the opportunities for new companies to be undertaking this here.
He wasn't strawmanning that at all. His question was kind of valid because he put in the point of the company being regarded as high risk. They were assessed as high risk. That much is known. The only reason they got the contract was because of Arklow shipping. That was the only reason. And if you'd done enough research, you would have known that an Arklow should take the blame as well, partially, but the government definitely for accepting this. You would have noticed that their terms of service essentially told you how to order a pizza as well.
But it is entirely right, that the government has ensured that the majority of these contracts went to established companies, and I think it's entirely right that a company of which due diligence had been carried out. It's no good saying it wasn't, because it was, and we will ensure that the ferry capacity is there. What we're doing, of course, in these contracts is ensuring that we are able to deal with the situation were we to enter into no deal. Now, the right honourable gentleman has said in the past that he didn't actually want any money being spent on no deal preparations. He's also said in the past that he doesn't want us to go into a no deal situation. That's fine, but if he doesn't want us to be in a no-deal situation, he's going to have to vote for the deal.
Before Corbyn speaks, I don't understand why she felt the need to add all that crap. We know he doesn't have a position, and quite frankly, it's a joke. Again, whether or not you consider this binary, that is up for debate, in the sense that you have to vote for the deal or go no deal, because that's all you have. Many MPs, as I stated yesterday, don't agree with that. They believe there's wiggle room, and Corbyn is one of those people who takes the position and believes that he can somehow get a new deal, or extend Article 50, or have another referendum, or I don't know. I really don't know what his position is, but it doesn't matter because he's focusing on the contract failing and not on Brexit. Yes, okay, so you could argue these are predicated on the assumption of no deal, but he's focusing on the contract because there are elements of this, as I mentioned earlier, consequences that are going to come up. And I think this is the question in a minute where he's going to ask about, the next question will allow me to go back to that PDF, because there's a part of it that just fucks the government. Well and truly fucks them.
It appears that we have to be fair to those advisors, because they were instructed to restrict their due diligence to the face value of the presentation put to them by Seaborne Freight, a company that had no trading history, and look into the directors of Seaborne, some of whom it appears would not have passed a due diligence test.
Yeah, seriously, I'll link their website in the description below, and I'll also link some relevant sources on the directors when I'm finished here, because I've got them, but I've got to put them up. Yeah, no, not so great.
However, the Transport Secretary told the House this procurement was done properly in a way that conforms with government rules.
This part's going to fuck them.
But what a Freedom of Information request reveals is that the Secretary of State bypassed those rules, as the Procurement Assurance Board, a senior panel of experts and lawyers, were denied the chance to scrutinise the deal.
Which is a damning statement and a trend that comes under Chris Grayling's time as Transport Secretary. It sounds almost SNP at the same time. Whenever a request is made to them, they take forever to give you what you're after. But he's done it. He has abused the system. Now, I don't have access to the information that he, Mr. Corbyn here, managed to obtain. I don't have access to that, so I can't confirm it. I have to hope that he is being honest, but he probably isn't. There's probably some bias in there somewhere. But if this is true, and I'll be honest, Chris Grayling's actions in the past would lead me to believe that this has a shred of credibility. then it is a damning statement about this government's ability to follow the process.
So what action is the Prime Minister going to take over what appears to be a very clear breach of those rules?
Before Theresa May answers this, 2 points. Oh, Yoshi made a good point. There's a top chat and live chat. You can choose between... Oh, yeah, okay, you're talking about the chat. Right, so there are 2 points. The first one is if Chris Grayling has breached the rules, which I couldn't know about because I haven't seen the information that would confirm that, then he should be punished. There is a repeated trend with a number of MPs within this government who have repeatedly fucked up. Somehow Chris Grayling still has a job. I have no idea how. Amber Rudd has a second run in the fucking cabinet. No idea how. She's a fucking liar. The second thing is the fact that there was clearly something wrong in this deal. Okay? One of the advisory firms, there were a couple of advisory firms, but there was one that talked about Seaborne in particular. And it was in the PDF, but here it is. The standard tests could not be completed on Seaborne, given a lack of existing financial information due to it only being incorporated in April of 2017. Deloitte, therefore, did not make a formal assessment of Seaborne financial stability. That is a damning statement for when you do... If you have a startup company, right, I get that there is an issue with this kind of doing financial assessments, but at the same time, it would help. The government knew this, and they still accepted the risk, even though the only assurances you had were from companies that gave you their word. There was no legal text to say, yeah, we're going to buy some boats and take ownership partial of this company. So, you know, you're safe, fam, in it. No. You basically lied. Let's go back here. Oh yeah, I've got a load of tweets here. Right. We'll get to those soon, I promise. I've got a few sources left to look at. Close that, open that. I do apologise. Too many windows and I have to make sure I can see the chats. Now I can.
The contract was awarded following commercial, technical and financial assurance at a level in line with the company's status as a new entrant to the market, carried out not only by senior DFT officials, but by third-party organisations with experience and expertise in this area.
Deloitte is one of those companies, and they said no, you really shouldn't do this, as I showed you.
That includes Deloitte's, Mott MacDonald and Slaughter and May. It was
but Deloitte's said no, he couldn't do a formal assessment. How deluded are the people behind you that are feeding you information? They're not doing you justice. I can see why you wore the smaller anal beads today, for that extremely tight sphincter.
Designed in recognition of the risks posed. No money was paid
yeah, indeed, Sean, you're right.
To the contractor. No money would be paid until services were delivered, and therefore the money has been paid to that contractor. But I say to the right honourable gentleman, he has stood here time and time again and said actually that we shouldn't be doing anything to prepare for no deal. It is entirely right and proper that this government is taking the action necessary to ensure that should we it's not our policy to have a no deal, it is our policy to get a deal. But should we be in that no deal situation, we need to ensure we have the capacity we need, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Or as others would call it, wasting money. You know, who knows? There is a possibility here that money was spent on those assessors that did in fact total up to 0.8, but that's not mentioned in the report that he himself referenced.
Bring the Prime Minister back to the question of seaborne ferries. Eurotunnel has called this ferry contract procurement secretive and flawed exercise. And taxpayers now face a legal bill of nearly £1 million contesting that. The money goes up and up. The Secretary of State's decision to award the contract to Seaborne has increased the budget deficit of Thanet Council, the owners of Ramsgate Port, by nearly £2 million.
That is a lot of money to lose. Just think if they got the contract and it was all secure and there were freights, this wouldn't be an issue because they wouldn't be blowing money they didn't have. That's going to hit the council hard.
When questioned on this by the member for South Thanet, the Transport Secretary refused to give a guarantee. Can the Prime Minister today give a cast-iron commitment to the people of Thanet and confirm they won't be picking up the bill for this failure of this contract?
I take the position that Thanet shouldn't be held accountable for the actions of a company that lied. I think Seaborne Freight and the government themselves should pay for this. Seaborne for lying about what they were going to do because they had fuck all really, and the government for, well, misleading the public intentionally, not unintentionally. This wasn't accidental. You knew they had nothing. You knew they had no financial record that you could even look at for any sign of stability. They were high risk because they are a nothing company. Are any of the members of Thanet Council Tory? Actually, I don't know who the MP is for that area. But what I'll do is I will quickly go and look. Thanet MP. It is Craig McKinley, a Conservative politician since May of 2015. For South Thanet. Right, and South Thanet, Westgate on Sea. Broadstairs. So I don't know if he... Birchington. I think he covers... Oh no, yeah. Okay, yeah. Him and Roger Gale. Roger Gale is... Is he Labour? You've just shown me his office. Fan-fucking-tastic. Roger Gale is also another Conservative, so yeah. Thanet is a Conservative area. Which would make sense. I've been there a few times. It's quite... nice. Also, Corbyn's question is quite valid. The government, the council in that area should not be made to foot this bill. Okay? What Theresa May's about to say is one of the shittiest answers I have heard her ever use. You guys still have Tories, wow. Kent is quite conservative.
I say to the right honourable gentleman that the Department of Transport and other parts of government are in discussion with Thanet Council.
You don't negotiate with terrorists, just saying.
About the issue of this contract and the...
Because, you know, seriously.
Impact of this and the impact of this contract.
Because it wasn't the fault of the council. This was entirely done by you and your government, right? And Seaborne Freight. The Council of Thanet and the constituency should not suffer for your fuck-up. If they suffer for your fuck-up, or are made to suffer because you're in talks with them because you're negotiating this, although based on your deal for Brexit, your ability to negotiate is virtually impossible. In fact, I'd argue this guy's expression sums up your ability to negotiate. Press F to doubt, basically.
But can I also just again remind the right honourable gentleman of why it is that the Department of Transport has taken these actions in relation to ferry capacity. It is in order to be able to ensure that in a no-deal situation we are able to guarantee that medicines will be brought into this country. Primarily, we're prioritising medicines being brought into this country. Again, that was a question I seem to remember being asked on more than one occasion yesterday by members of the SNP who had an interest in that. The right honourable gentleman...
on the council, yes. UKIP has councillors, yes, but not MPs. MPs are a little bit higher up on the ladder. But councillors, yes, then it does have a fair few. There are quite a number of them in Kent, actually.
The gentleman doesn't seem to be interested in ensuring that we can, in a no-deal situation, provide the medicines that people in this country need. That's what we're doing. That's a sensible approach of a government that is taking this matter seriously.
Her answer, and I summed it up in my notes in 3 words, nebulous, and the other 2 words were intentional misdirect. She didn't really answer the question. She made it seem like they were doing something proactive, but were actually trying their best to say, yeah, Thanet, sorry, niggers, but it's all on you fags. Which is an absolute shite answer.
Maybe the Prime Minister should follow the advice of the House and take no deal off the table and...
The House didn't vote for that. The House did not vote for that at all, Jeremy. Please stay on topic.
Negotiate seriously with the European Union.
The European Union has also outright said there'll be no more negotiations. So, this is the one time you fuck up, really. Okay, you fucked up a little, but by comparison to Theresa, you actually did a fantastic fucking job. The point is, you can't take no deal off the table because no deal is an eventuality if you can't agree a deal. You can't remove it. Time cannot be altered. Time is guaranteed. To pass anyway. And you cannot negotiate with those that refuse to negotiate with you. And I also take the position that I said earlier. One does not negotiate with terrorists. And I consider the EU to now be a terrorist organisation. And yes, I'm being sarcastic.
And it cannot be right, Mr. Speaker, it cannot be right that a hard-pressed local council and local taxpayers are footing the bill for the incompetence of the Secretary of State for Transport and this government. The spectacular failure of this contract is a symptom, Mr. Speaker, of the utter shambles of this government and its no-deal preparations. The Transport Secretary ignored warnings about drones and airport security.
Yeah, which caused the issues at Gatwick this year, which led to many flights being cancelled, which fucked a lot of people off. Considering where that drone actually came from, it's hilarious. I feel sorry for people in Gatwick. I grew up around there. We need to get Omegon an IRL sarcasm sign. Yes, donate to my Streamlabs. The new goal is to get a sarcasm sign. It'll be all tentacly and everything.
Gave a £1.4 billion contract to Carillion, despite warnings over their finances. He oversaw the disastrous new rail timetables last year, rail punctuality at a 13-year low, and fares at a record high.
Which I absolutely am on his side here, because she was so fucking annoying. If the fares are going up, but the quality of the service is going down, you need to justify this. Now, I know a lot of the private companies have shareholders to pay money to. I get that. However, people don't trust the service because it's so inept. If a leaf falls on the track, all the trains are stopped for like a week to get that leaf off, to get the approval to remove that leaf. So a replacement bus service exists, and it's even worse. As far as I'm concerned, we need to adopt a system that is, well, punctual. That would help. It's a good start. Might I recommend just, I don't know, stealing all the Japanese? Because apparently they know what punctuality is when it comes to rail services. We have high-speed rail, but there's a possibility it may get cancelled, because to continue subsidising it and running it, it would go up to about $6 billion a year. Now, I use high-speed rail because instead of taking 6 hours to get to Norwich, it takes 3 and a bit. And the cost isn't too bad. But all the other services I have used in the past are horrendous. I once got a first-class ticket on a train from Norwich. I then looked at the economy class and noticed that even though I pre-booked my seat, I ended up sitting in economy because the seats in economy were actual seats as opposed to the horribly threaded, like as if a cat had poddled on it until there was nothing left. My seat was reserved and it looked like a cat had abused it with its claws. But in economy, the seats were actual seats. The quality is trash. And people are expected to pay more money for a service that isn't on time, which risks people being late for work because they can't arrive on time. Because the timetables also, and I saw the timetables, also, they were an absolute abomination. I don't know who the genius was that came up with those, but I assume what they did was they made an entire... by the way, the only reason I got a first-class ticket was because I had the money to have it, okay? And because it was the only ticket I could get at short notice. But I assume the genius who came up with the new timetable, what they did was they got themselves an N-gauge train set, laid it out at all the train routes, and decided... Thank you very much for that donation. I may be a bit of I'm messing around by your stream time, but these autistic breakdowns of PMQs are really appreciated. Have an hour of my labour. Thank you. My autistic breakdowns. Thank you. But I assume we got an N-gauge train set out and made all the routes, and then decided, you know what's really going to be wizard? If I set the times for when these move, and that won't totally fuck people up. I mean, we're giving rules. Omegon is posh. To be fair, I am posh, but I don't look posh. I look like I blend in. I'm a bit of a chameleon. You don't notice me for the most part. I don't know if autism is bad. I don't know if it's bad. I'm not autistic, but I won't judge people who are. But maybe my interpretation of this is a bit autistic. You never know. But yeah, Chris Grayling has not done a very good job. And by the way, I have a number of tweets from people and videos that are amusing, and we'll get to those when Teresa's given her answer, which I've even put here. She's going to focus on on one aspect of the transport system, right, and fails to mention how high-speed rail might end, and then fobs Corbyn off. I occasionally the top hat and the cane, but never the monocle. I love monocles. I want a monocle. I want one. I want to buy one now.
That is some achievement. And now the Transport Secretary is in charge of a major and vital aspect of Brexit planning. How on earth, Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister say that she has confidence in the Transport Secretary?
I personally think that Chris Grayling should be fired. He has made so many mistakes. I don't know if I'd look funny with a cane. I don't really care for canes personally anyway. I think they're rubbish. But I do like the idea of a top hat. Although I'm British, so it's bowler hat and a monocle. I would like a bowler hat and a monocle, but as I have a rather large head, it's quite difficult to get monocles, bowler hats for my head.
Let me tell the Right Honourable Gentleman what the Transport Secretary is delivering. The biggest rail investment programme since the Victorian era.
That isn't something to brag about, to be honest, because investing in it makes it sound like you're improving the service, but actually a huge chunk of that is going to shareholders.
Spending nearly 48 billion on improving our railways to deliver better journeys. 20% higher on average every year than under a Labour government.
That doesn't mean you're doing a good job, though. It just means they did an even shitter job than you. But you're now catching up with them in regards to failing in public transport services. Which many will now argue, this is now a valid argument as to why we should renationalise so many of the services. Because these systems clearly aren't, you know... Everyone messes up when speaking once in a while, so your speech throughout the video is far from... Oh, right. Well, thank you for clearing that up for me. Yeah, anyway.
That's what the Transport Secretary is delivering. Commitment to transport in this country and commitment to transport across the whole of this country. But I notice that the Right Honourable Gentleman wanted to focus his questions in that way, rather than asking more general questions in relation to Brexit. Because, of course, there are still a number of issues. There's still a number of issues on Brexit where we don't know his answers to the big questions. We don't know if he'd... It's no good Labour members burying their heads in their hands.
They're just embarrassed because this is cringe now.
We don't know whether their leader backs the second referendum. We don't know whether their leader backs the deal. We don't even know whether he backs Brexit. He prefers ambiguity and playing politics to acting in the national interest. People used to say he was a conviction politician. Not anymore.
Okay, so while that is a cringy way to end that with her, or with him, she has a point. But he still destroyed you, I'm sorry. He beat you. We're going to skip ahead a little because I don't care. But let's go to... I hope you're all ready. I hope you're all buckled in here. Because we have the paper fiddler coming.
It's Ian Blackford.
Oh, and yes, it's all Brexit with this tosser, so yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I congratulate so many of my colleagues who are sporting yellow today as a mark of solidarity with those from Catalonia that are on trial for the political principle.
Yeah, free Catalonia, everyone. I hope you all can agree with me. I don't like the idea. I actually support him on this one. I don't care for Spain. I don't care for it at all. They want independence. Unsurprisingly, the SNP would support that. But I support their independence because Spain's fucked without them. How the fuck does Spain have an actual government that has autonomy over the other regions when the other regions have their own devolved administrations? I know it's similar to the UK, I guess, but at the same time, it's not.
Supporting self-determination. Mr. Speaker,
oh, touch that paper, boy. Touch it. Touch it. That's right, boy.
To this House,
touch that paper.
Before the 29th of March.
Right, honourable gentleman, he was present yesterday when I made my statement to the House, and he heard the process that we will be following. There, of course, is a debate that is taking place tomorrow, and then we have made clear that we would bring back, if a meaningful vote hasn't been brought back and passed by this House, we'll make a statement on the 26th of February and a debate on an amendable motion on the 27th.
So essentially the vote would happen either on the 27th or the 28th.
Ian Blackford.
I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, that was no answer from a Prime Minister that continues to run
touch
the clock
that
down.
paper.
This is the height of arrogance from a government set on running the clock down. Just 44 days from a no-deal scenario, the Prime Minister is hung-strung by her own party and rejected by European leaders. The Prime Minister must stop playing fast and loose. Businesses are begging for certainty. The economy is already suffering. Prime Minister, you've come to the end of the road, rumbled by your own loose-lipped senior Brexit advisor. Will the Prime Minister now face down the extremists in her own party and extend Article 50?
Right, so this is a bit of a wasted question from him, because extending Article 50 would need approval from the EU, who have already said it's not going to happen. I feel like he's a moron in a really well-made suit that's reinforced for that girth. It's embarrassing when you know this and yet you keep on trying to push for it. Did I make you jump? I do apologise if I made anyone jump in the chat, but seriously, touch that paper. I would have done it deeper, but for some reason my voice refused to obey. I do, before we finish, want to go over here. Right. This is one of the things I want to show you. This is Andy MacDonald. He has written a letter to Theresa May with regards to Chris Grayling, asking that he should sack him if he doesn't offer his resignation. It's a valid criticism, to be honest. While he is a Labour MP and someone might say it's party politics, not even my voice obeys me, yes, thank you. I do genuinely agree that Chris Grayling needs to go. Next thing I want to show you, this is from the Labour Party, but a little video here. So we'll pause that, go back, full screen it, and so, Omegon, your voice is a bit similar to Teal Deer. Doesn't Teal Deer put his voice through a modulator to make it the voice you hear? I think he does. I've heard a botch on a Honey Badger stream that was on Doc Random McCann's channel. It's not there anymore, but his voice was different. I don't know if it was because it got run through. It was very deep, I don't know if that was because of a fuck up on Honey Badger's end, or whether his microphone fucked up. I don't know. I've never bothered to ask him, but I was also because, let's face it, why the fuck would he pay attention to me? But yes, this video, it's only a minute long and I want to show you. Oh, it's fine.
A third, smaller contract worth £13.8 million potentially was awarded to Seaborne Freight. Well, we've done detailed work on their financial plans and on their operational plans. I want this service to run. This isn't something that's been plucked from thin air. We've been aware.
Mr. Speaker, the Transport Secretary has awarded a £14 million contract to a company with no money, no ships, no employees, no ports, one telephone line and no working website or sailing schedule.
He's slightly wrong, they do have a working website. It's just trash. Yeah, they are quite right with this, to be honest. It's quite good, actually. It's like the Something for Dummies thing. There is Jeremy Corbyn here.
Of the utter shambles of this government.
But this is his comments from a PMQ. And then there's finally Emily Thornberry. She's a bit of a stuck-up bitch. Oh god, look at Abbott. Fucking hell. Is she wearing a wig? Oh dear god, never mind. But these statements were all made by... Okay, this last one here wasn't, but this was all mentioned in Prime Minister's Questions by Jeremy Corbyn. Labour have absolutely hammered this bald fuck. And rightly so. He's fucked up many times. And because of that, he's put people in a very difficult position. I don't know if he should go, but I have a voice like honey. You're a Brit. Brits don't like my voice. Anyway, I think I'm done, so I'm going to disappear and write some stuff for tomorrow's video. I am back here tomorrow with Trups LP, who's in the chat, provided he's around, for our typical, usual weekly political recap. I have no idea what the subject will be, because I've done no research for it yet. But I'll do that tomorrow during the day, and hopefully it'll be as well prepared as last week's and this PMQ, which I'm quite chuffed actually. I wrote a lot of notes and I covered most of it. Yeah. I still think that the Ramsgate route would be great if we actually had that. We don't use the Port of Ramsgate for much. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. It could grow and become something really special and increase our trade routes, which is even better. And that would help employment around here, because employment in Kent, especially in the coastal areas, isn't great. So, yes, thank you all very much for joining me, and I'll see you all tomorrow.